Chair, we're now live.
Thank you, Liz. A very warm welcome to those of you here in the room and to our viewers watching live on the Council's YouTube channel, Hillingdon, London. Welcome to the Hillingdon Planning Committee. I am Councillor Adam Bennett. I am the Vice Chairman of the Committee and the Chairman of tonight's meeting. Details of the business to be considered today are shown on the agenda, copies of which are accessible online under the live broadcast. For those present in the room and intending to speak, please note that you will be filmed and any statements you make will be recorded and made public. A reminder to anyone speaking that your voice will only be audible online if the microphone is switched on. We are not expecting a fire drill this evening, so if the fire alarm does go off, please follow officers to the fire exits and out of the building to the designated meeting points. For those of you in the room, could we just ask that you switch any mobile devices to silent or off? Now the meeting has started, the councillors and members of the committee will be using their laptops and tablet devices to view the paperwork. Before we get started on the agenda, I'd just like to introduce everybody who is here in front of you this evening. The councillors, Councillor Keith Burrows, Councillor Roy Chamdal, Councillor Darren Davies, Councillor Elizabeth Gerlich, Councillor Jajit Singh, and Councillor Raju Sansapuri. And in terms of officers, we have Ed Lawton, Area Planning Service Manager, Katie Crosby, Area Planning Service Manager, Alan Corcoran, Deputy Planning Team Leader, Chris Brady, Planning Team Leader, Richard Mikowski, Highways Engineer, Natalie Fairclough, Legal Advisor, and Liz Penny, the Democratic Services Officer. That means we can get started onto the agenda. Agenda item 1 is apologies for absence. Liz.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we've received apologies from Councillor Higgins with Councillor Darren Davies substituting, and also from Councillor Mand with Councillor Sansapuri substituting. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz, and thank you, Councillor Sansapuri and Councillor Davis for substituting. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest in the matters coming before the meeting. Any declarations?
Hi, Chairman. Yes, declaring interest in agenda item 6, Wilmer Close, or the item 6, Wilmer Close. I'm the ward councillor and I've made submission on that.
Any other declarations of interest at all? No. Agenda item 3 is to receive the minutes of the previous meeting. Did anybody have any amendments that they would like to make? No? Can we take those as agreed? Thank you. Agenda item 4 is matters that have been notified in advance or urgent. I don't believe there are any. And agenda item 5 is to confirm that all of the agenda items this evening are public, part 1, and will be considered here in front of the public audience and gallery. Before we move on to the applications, I'm going to take applications 7 and 8 before 6, so a slight change of order. Agenda item 7, 44 Frase Avenue in West Drayton.
Thank you, Chairman. Item 7 relates to an application at 44 Frase Avenue. Before we move on to the presentation, I would like to draw members' attention to the committee addendum and the proposed amendment to the landscaping condition, which is condition 4. And the inclusion of an additional condition, which is condition 14, to secure relevant BNG information. At present, as per the recommendation, the application seeks to utilise the BNG self-build exemption. We've actually managed to achieve agreement to provide a 10% net gain on site, which is at the top of the framework and is to be supported. As such, an amendment to condition 4 to include the provision of 10% net gain on site and the condition 14, which is the management plan condition, are to be added to the decision notice. The application proposes the demolition of the existing dwelling and reconstruction of a new build family home. The application has come before Planning Committee due to the submission of a petition which includes 32 signatures in objection to the development. The application has also generated 5 letters of objection and 1 letter of support. Here's the location plan with the site located in the red area. Here is the constraints plan. The application site comprises of a two-storey dwelling with a rendered exterior and a pitched tiled roof, which has been extended to the side and the front. Frase Avenue is a residential area and is therefore residential in character, with a mix of properties including modern dwellings. The site lies within the Garden City West Drayton area of special local character. Here is the location plan, with the site located within the red edge. I'll now take you through some of the plans. Here is the existing site plan with elevations. The site you will see is this property here. The application site has been subject to previous planning history, which is noted in the report. The application is a resubmission of an application which was submitted in 2024, so not too long ago, and this application was refused on the grounds of impact upon the character of the area, unsatisfactory amenity and the living conditions. As detailed in the officer's report, the current application overcomes these reasons for refusal to a satisfactory end. The current scheme has been subject to revisions, which include the reduction to the front gabled feature, the reduction of the front canopy, and a reduction in the scale of the crown roof. So where we talk about those elements, we are talking about this feature here, which is the gabled feature at the front, the roof canopy here, and also the scale of the crown roof. So crown roof is here, gabled feature here, and the canopy. What you'll note from this plan, and it'll be more evident in a moment when I take you through the photos, is that there are two properties which lie to the eastern side of this new dwelling, which have got a distinctly similar character, and both of those are new build constructions. The revised scheme is considered to harmonise with the evolving street scene of Frase Avenue, where there are examples of newer dwellings of a similar appearance and proportions to the development being proposed. The development would not harm neighbour amenity or highway safety, and provides satisfactory living conditions, and all amenity would be achieved. A comprehensive landscaping scheme would be secured by condition, and this would also include biodiversity enhancements to achieve a 10% on-site biodiversity net gain, as detailed in the addendum. So I'm going to take you through some of the photos. I think one of the key points to highlight in these photos is that whilst the Frase Avenue area of special local character is comprised by single-family dwelling houses, they are varying in character. So what you have is a mix of bungalow properties with front dormers, as you see on the left-hand side there. It is noted that in the objections and the petition raised that there has been some newer build properties. You can see one on the right-hand side there. That is actually one of two properties that were consented more recently and constructed. But there are two-storey properties within the Frase Avenue street scene which are original. So the application site is here. Closer view, where I referred to those two new build properties, they are here. Street scene, so you've got smaller bungalow element here, two-storey dwelling, two-storey dwellings, some larger two-storey dwellings here. Again, quite a varied character. Street scene again here. For the reasons detailed in the committee report and the addendum, and those shown within the site photos, officers recommend that the application is approved subject to conditions. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Chris. Do we have a Mr. Alan Atkinson here? Please come forward. So you are the petitioner for this item. Come and take a seat.
Not actually the petitioner, she couldn't make it and I'm speaking on.
That's perfect. Please do take a seat.
Just before I sit, just give you these photos and the two copies of the area special code. one for yourself,
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
one for yourself.
Oop.
Get on with that. One for yourself,
Okay.
and there's one for the here, and also I've got some other photos which are I've got 3 copies on.
That's fine.
They're all the same.
So we'll. Yeah.
You
Well-
can't read it all, so...
Yeah. Look, we
I don't think...
No.
Because it's too much information for
There's
people to look at.
you get 5 minutes to speak. I mean, if it was a few photos to pass around, definitely we would happy to look at those. But if there's any report, there's no time to read it. You have 5 minutes to tell us what you would like. So whenever you want to start, just press the button. There'll be a system here, so you'll get 5 minutes, green up until 4. When you've got 1 minute left, it goes amber, and then when it goes red, we'll politely bring you to a stop. So whenever you're ready.
I am Alan Atkinson. I lived on Frase Avenue, Australian, for the last 55 years. I've been asked by 32 residents who signed a petition against the demolition of a sound 2-storey house and erection of a 3-storey house to speak on their behalf. I must point out that Frase Avenue is part of an area of special character. Excuse me. That the proposed development will be at a sheer height against the development because of its sheer height and bulk, destroy our area of special character. It would totally spoil the street scene with a 3-storey house set in next to a bungalow next door. The pictures that you showed on there doesn't show you the real effect what's happening, but those photos will show you the heights which the existing bungalow left will have to look up against. And also that opposite, which there's no measurements are, they're all bungalows, which wasn't conveniently shown on the plan. We must stop this sort of development, which number 40 has started this precedent. If we let this keep on happening, we will lose the area of special character, which happened to the Railway Estate Conservation Area in Hayes, where it was changed over so many times that it lost its title and no longer worthy of being a conservation area. We do not want to lose our area of special character. If this is not stopped, the whole street will be a row of 3-storey houses. What the gentleman failed to say, who's showing to all these houses, they're not 3 stories. Majority of them are 2 stories with some alterations to the roof space, making it partly livable roof space. But this development is totally different. Totally destroying our area of special character, which is at the moment predominantly bungalows, chalet bungalows and series-door houses with 1 metre spaces between boundary and houses, which has been established for many years as set out by the special character which I've handed to you. It's very interesting history of this estate as set out in a copy of the said documents. In reality, the reason for these houses and bungalows were being replaced with large houses is at a later date they were turned into houses of multiple occupation, as done at the newly built 20A, when we were told they were for family homes. It would have been 1 metre taller if I hadn't stopped the builders carrying on, and with the owners' reluctant agreement, agreed to take the roof off and rebuild it as the plan at 8 metres 150, which the council won't know about that until I've just told you. If allowed and not stopped, it would end up with 3 floors later. All the structural openings for the roof lights are already there, but have been tiled over. So you wouldn't know, but it's already ready to make it into a 3-storey. Please turn down this application for number 44, all for the above reasons stated, and preserve our area of special Sorry, Mr. Page. Oh yeah. Time will tell what happened to number 40 Frase Avenue, the one that you showed on the plan. Granted permission in 2019. It's already built, but has not yet been occupied. Please turn down this application for number 44, all for the above reasons stated, and preserve our precious area of social, local character and family homes. If you are unable to refuse this application this evening, would you ask that you please defer the decision and visit the site for yourselves to see the special character of the garden city that we're trying hard to preserve, because it is being destroyed. And that's what I've written down. So,
thank you.
I apologise for the rush, but I've just had to run from the car park and up the stairs and
that's fine.
still talk.
Thank you, Mr. Atkinson. Did any of the members of the committee have any questions for the petitioner at all? Councillor Davies.
Yeah, thank you for your statement here. You mentioned about roof lights being tiled over. Can you just give me some clarity on that?
Yes, number 28.
So it's not the development property?
It's not this development,
okay.
no, but I mean, I only highlight that because this is what's happening on this estate.
Right.
The council has been fooled.
Okay, thank you very much.
So it's not to do with this particular house.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for the petitioner? No? Thank you very much, Mr. Atkinson. If you could just turn the microphone off just before you return to the gallery. Thank you. Oh, and your glasses as well. That's okay. Do we have the applicant, Mr. Madhang, or the agent, Mr. Panach, here to speak? I would take that as a no. Councillor Sweeting, as the ward councillor for West Drayton.
As noted, I declare a non-pecuniary interest in this agenda item. I speak against this planning application and in support of the efforts of the Garden City residents to protect the integrity of their area of special local character, recognised since the 1980s by this council. The proposed development, if approved, would be different from any other property on the Garden City and will deliver a building out of character by reason of bulk, scale and design. In noting the officer's report, yes, figure 3 does show the height of this proposed matching others, but none, repeat, none, have the huge side dormer. Paragraph 7.14 mentions number 40 and 42 being similar to the proposed. Not so, as they have no side dormer, creating a larger living space on the 3rd floor, contrary to the area of special local character, which sets out the acceptability of only single-storey or two-storey buildings. If this planning application is approved, it has the potential for other two-storey properties in this area to be extended upwards using side dormers. Paragraph 7.5 mentions that the Council's Conservation Officer did not previously have an issue of the loss of the existing family residence, but did the plans for the new property at that time include the proposed side dormer, as this surely would have merited an objection. In addition, paragraph 7.9 states that there is proposed a gap between numbers 44 and the neighbouring 46 of some 1.5 metres. This does not accord with the drawings, as it is less than 1 metre. I'm not sure whether the documents provide a clear picture by comparing proposed to existing. Indeed, the application details and even the plans are somewhat sketchy. However, one statistic does stick out. Existing attractive 3-bedroom family home of some 172 square metres, replaced by the proposed building of 316 square metres, a difference of 144 square metres, an increase of 84%, So it will indeed be an enormous bulky building and not like any other. So if approved, a very unfortunate precedent will be set. Residents protecting this area of special local character will be unable to stop the 3-storey tsunamis with side dormers coming their way when any other small bungalow is sold to make way for a giant. I ask the committee to refuse this unacceptable planning application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sweeting. Any questions for Councillor Sweeting from the committee? I did just have one, Councillor Sweeting, if it's okay. So you're one of the local ward councillors. You live in the local area. You get the sense in the petitioner that this area has changed a bit over time. Has there been a lot of houses on this road that have been demolished, rebuilt, or have been extended? Has the area changed over the last sort of 20, 30 years?
They have, but there is a residents' association which has supported very heartily the continuation of this area of special local character. And although there's been some extensions, some of them quite minor, we have now this tsunami of let's make the loft area into a 3rd storey. This has not happened in the past. And really what we're seeing now is I think there's going to be smiles on developers' faces when they see that, yes, 3 storeys is okay for the Garden City. It's not. And the rules and regulations which the council has in details of, which have been provided in detail by the Residents' Association, are there for all to see. It is predominantly still single-storey or double-storey. But unfortunately, we've got these massive 3 in a row which have morphed into a 3rd storey. And this one shows very clearly. There's also the issue of how many bedrooms. The plans are so obscure that, yes, it says 3 bedrooms for the existing property, but nowhere have we got any real audit of that 84% additional capacity in floor area, what it's going to be used for. We know it's going to be more and more bedrooms, but that's not clear in the plans before us this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Sweeting. I think there's no other questions. You can return to the gallery. Did you want to come back, Chris, on anything that Councillor Sweeting or the petitioner has said before we go to the discussion amongst members?
Yes, Chairman. I'll address some of the issues or some of the concerns that have been raised in the order in which I've noted them. I think, first of all, it needs to be made clear that in planning terms this is not a 3-storey property, it's a 2-storey dwelling. It's evident from what you see on screen that the height of the development is also compares to not only the 2 properties that have newly been constructed next door but an existing property a few doors down. If we're referring to the 3-storey nature of this property being a 3-storey property because it's got a side dormer which increases the level of accommodation that can be placed within the roof, then we do need to be very careful because that same principle would apply to any property that benefits from a dormer under PD. So we wouldn't class any property that benefits from a dormer under PD as a 3-storey dwelling. I would also like to just point out that a dormer can be constructed to the side of the property under permitted development. So it doesn't need to be focused to the rear. So in fact, because these properties benefit from permitted development rights, there is nothing stopping this development from being approved without the dormer then being constructed after, because a condition to be placed on this property to remove PD rights would not meet the relevant tests. Okay, so turning to the point that's been made about...
Just to clarify, so the permitted development rights as well, that's set nationally as planning legislation?
They're restricted in areas where there's designated heritage assets, so a conservation area, for example, and they're restricted from listed buildings. Although this is an area of special local character in which there are some valued contributions, this isn't a designated heritage asset and PD rights have not been removed. I have a feeling that the council would like to come back on something. I don't know if you want to offer the
Councillor,
opportunity.
you've had your 3 minutes, and then I did ask a question. Apologies.
Yep. Yep. So I think just to cover off the last point about the dormer, if the dormer is the only point in which we are saying that this development is unacceptable, then officers would not consider there to be a robust reason for a refusal relating to simply just the dormer for the reasons I've already set out. In the event that we would approve this development without the dormer in place, we wouldn't be seeking to remove PD rights, in which case the applicant, the owner of the property, could construct the dormer under permitted development. So there's 2 points there. The dormer doesn't necessarily make it a 3-storey property, and the dormer is actually well within proportion. Although the conservation officer has provided comments on the scheme, there is no additional comments provided regarding the dormer. The officers consider that the dormer is acceptable. Turning to the point that's been made about the property being in perfectly good condition, there is no policy basis to protect the existing building. It may well be in perfectly good condition, however there's no policy basis to protect it.
The owner can decide what they want to do with it ultimately.
Yeah, exactly that. Just regarding the potential for a HMO here, the plans which are included within members' plan pack, there will be the plans that have been viewed by the petitioners online, they're within the public domain, and they would have been passed to members to review prior to committee. It's quite evident on the plans which are bedrooms and which are not. I don't know if they're on this presentation. They may not be. No, it might be an oversight that we've not included them in the presentation, but they would have been included in the plan pack that's been circulated. The bedrooms are denoted by beds. There are 3 on the first floor, and there's 1 additional within the roof space. So that's a 4-bedroom property. Pardon? So the existing property has got 3 bedrooms. The proposed development would add 1 additional bedroom. So just to cover off the final points just regarding what I think is being portrayed as a degradation of the character and appearance of the area of special local character. When we're looking at assessing a planning application, we are taking into consideration things like the established pattern of development, impact upon the character and appearance of the street scene, and that is formed by things like the design of the property, the bulk, the scale, the mass. This is the reason why we place these photos into the presentation, and I do agree with the petitioner when he states that we have not taken photos of all of the properties, but what this does give you is a clear indication that there is a mix of property types. The scale, bulk and mass of this dwelling is comparable to existing properties, not the new build properties, but the existing properties within the street scene. It's also similar to the design that's been accepted on the 2 properties next door, and in fact we've sought revisions to the front gable and the extent of the crown roof in order to bring it in line with those. Therefore, the building alone does not degrade the character and appearance of the street scene or the area of special local character. It's also complementary to the existing character, and we cannot deny that the 2 buildings right next door do contribute to that character. I think that's very important for members to consider.
Ultimately, the planning inspector, if this went to appeal, would be looking at the street scene as you have just articulated.
Yes, correct. There has been a planning inspector on site next door. It wasn't to approve the development next door. The development next door was approved by the council, but there was a condition which was placed on the neighbouring developments, which I believe was possibly a landscaping condition or an element of it. The applicant did not agree with that part of the condition. It was appealed. The subsequent decision was to overturn the council's decision to impose that condition. That doesn't necessarily set a precedent for appeals here, but I think cumulatively what I've explained in terms of there is no impact upon the character and appearance of the street scene, there is no protection of the existing property, this is not an application for a HMO, and it is a two-storey dwelling, does amount to an acceptable development. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chris. So I open it to members of the committee. Who would like to take us away? Councillor Chamdale.
Thank you, Chair. I fully sympathise with the petitioner in what he's saying, but we have seen throughout the years now these kind of developments are getting more and more. And you go down your local streets and you see the street scene is slowly changing. And what you are getting are from bungalows becoming large houses. And I think the officers have put a good report in. The explanations given now, I think it really is about material planning considerations on what we can, if there are robust reasons as to we feel why application should be refused. I don't believe we have those. I believe that this is a revamp of the previous application, and they've made changes. And looking at the street scene on just under above point 3, you see the houses next door. I mean, they have skylights to the ceiling, the roofs, the dormers, which I think very strange because they're normally round the back. So I think with what's been presented and what we've been told by officers, I think the report is quite robust in that, and I would go for the officer's recommendation with all the conditions that are contained in the report.
Thank you, Councillor Chamdale. Councillor Davies.
I just want to ask officers a question, just to take on board what the petitioner said. So, are we able to add the HMO condition to this, that the property can't be used as a HMO without coming back before committee? Because I understand, look, we are tied here. So, is there something that we can add a HMO condition to this?
Yeah, thank you. And I would normally, in some instances, agree that the condition would be required. If we look at the floor plans, the bedrooms are actually in excess of this standard, which would be secured for a single person, in which case, if apart from one of the bedrooms, if it was able to be accommodated by more than one person, you'd in fact end up with 2, 4, 6, at least 7 occupants potentially, which would take it above HMO that could be constructed under the small-scale HMO C4. So I think the design of the property itself wouldn't allow for a small-scale HMO to be approved under a CLD, and planning permission in itself would be required. Thank you.
Just to come back on that, so even though they have the ability to push over 7 rooms or 7 bedrooms, doesn't stop them from doing 6, so they don't have to go to a licence. So in hindsight, if they have to go for, if they have 7 bedrooms and they have to come back for a licence, would it hurt to put that condition in anyway, knowing that they can't use it? And that way we're protecting the residents.
What I would say is there's a significant amount of space on the ground floor level.
Yep.
When we're discounting that completely at the moment from my assessment of whether or not it would require planning permission. So effectively you'd have to say that the entire ground floor would not be used to accommodate any bedrooms. So as I said, that at the moment I cannot see any robust reason to add the HMO condition on, because the character and the scale of the property, we would not approve a CLD for an application for a HMO. It would require the benefit of planning consent. Ed, did you want to come in?
Sorry, Chairman, can I just come in there? So, I use the term, look, I understand what you're saying here, but if it is going to be what it says on the tin, a family home, and we're approving the plans that are here, if we decide to approve the plans that are here and add that condition, there should be no reason for any form of appeal or any risk. Look, the applicant should be very happy he's got his development and we've got that condition in. That's my concern there, and I don't know if legal could maybe put something in on that as well. But if we decide to move forward with this, the applicant has got his building, the residents have got their protection, and we've ticked all the boxes. Of course, we don't know where we're going to go with this, but...
Look, Councillor Davis, I do agree in a sense that we want to protect properties and residents that are neighbouring these types of developments from the impacts that can be derived from large-scale HMOs. I think we need to be very careful when imposing conditions, and as a planning officer we need to be quite clear in our responsibility to direct members on where a condition would meet the tests. I don't believe a condition in this for this application would meet the relevant test, because it wouldn't be reasonable due to the scale of the property. The design does not allow, and the scale of the property does not allow for this to be used really as a small-scale HMO, which is what we're trying to prevent. By adding the condition, you're not actually preventing the property from being used in the future as a HMO. You're preventing them from being able to do it without the benefit of planning consent. And what I'm saying to you is they would already require the benefit of planning consent because of the scale of the property. So you're adding a condition on that I don't believe would meet the relevant test.
And with, if such a condition was added, even if the application was approved, that condition could still be appealed?
Yeah, I mean, it would be within the applicant's benefit to appeal the condition. Again, I don't see why they'd want to appeal the condition, but I wouldn't want to surmise, because, again, the condition, in my opinion, doesn't meet the relevant tests. I do think it's unreasonable in this sense.
Thank you. Councillor Singh wanted to come in.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you also to give us all details about the HMO and the 4th bedroom. So can I ask, have you got enough parking spaces there according to 4-bedroom house?
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, so what you'll see just below the front here is 2 parking spaces. So the London plan would say anything over, anything within a low P-tile area that is 3 beds or more would require 1.5. We've actually got 2. There's adequate parking and access for the property to the front. Thank you.
Any further question on that? No? Councillor Gaelic.
Thank you, Chair. In my opinion, the appearance of a building is bulky for the size of a plot, especially with a minimal separation. Going back to the HMO licensing, are there any impediments that later on the applicant will apply for a permission to planning to divide the house into 2 flats, which would, in essence, create unlicensed HMO because we don't have additional licensing for HMOs?
Great.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Any separation or segregation of the single planning residential unit into more than one unit would require the benefit of permission. So that would then come back to planning officers to assess. The petitioner would have the right to comment on that, and if so be it, they would be able to bring the application back to planning committee if a petition was lodged and it met the scheme of delegation. So, thank you.
Councillor Sansapuri.
Yeah, thank you. The petitioner said in his statement that there was one in the same road, one house was granted permission for family use, and now it is HMO. Is it true?
Unfortunately, I can't answer a question about another property. It's not relevant to the consideration of what's before members. I think the petitioner also did refer to the council not being aware of what's going on in some of the properties along that street. So the fact that we're not aware of it would mean I can't answer that question. So any unlawful use of a property along the street should really be registered with planning enforcement, and the enforcement team would need to be, that investigation would need to take place separately from the consideration of this application.
And one more question is, because there is no any significant changes in the bedroom, okay, from 3 to bedroom, and then what is the purpose of such a large building? And they rebuilding, what are the intention? They are not clear.
So when we're assessing a planning application, particularly for accommodation in the roof, part of the roof form, and you'll see it on the plan which is in front of you, won't meet the minimum standard for head height. So a proportion of the floor space wouldn't actually meet the London Plan standards in terms of being habitable. So you've also got a significant level of sort of general amenity space at ground floor level. So you've got kitchen, living room, and other forms of just general living accommodation at ground floor, which need to be taken into consideration within that additional floor space. There's also slightly larger bedrooms and additional bathrooms being proposed. I mean, the scale of development here is comparable to other properties that are original properties within the street scene. That scale of floor space might not necessarily be common, because there are properties which have got which are single story with some accommodation in the roof, which are shown on the left hand side there. But this is not an abnormal sized property from a planning perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. But possibly, internal things can be changed any time.
Yeah, and that would be a matter for the enforcement team to deal with. We're assessing the planning application here for a two-storey dwelling that provides 4 bedrooms, 1 additional bedroom above what's existing at the moment. Thank you.
I think it's a very valid point, Chris, that we are, as frustrating as it is if you live nearby and you see what's going on at other properties and that allegedly this happens there, that happens there. We are here to consider this application on its own merit, not any other property on the road. And we do have to factor in basically what is in the report and nothing else. Councillor Davies.
Chairman, it still doesn't sit right with me that we can't protect the residents from a HMO. I just want to ask a question to legal directly. If we were to go against officers' recommendations and impose that condition of putting that it couldn't be a HMO or the non-HMO condition, where do we stand as a committee? Because I understand officers have their jobs, but here as panel members we also have to look at what's in front of us, and I don't feel comfortable with it, if I can be completely honest.
So imposing any condition would have to be based on planning merits, and it would have to satisfy the 6-part test. So is it necessary? Can it be enforced? So the whole all six parts of the test would have to be satisfied. So from what planning officers have said tonight, they don't feel that it satisfies the test. So to deviate from that, you run the risk of, yes, an appeal, that an unnecessary and unenforceable planning conditions are imposed. And from what I've seen and heard, there's nothing to suggest that this site or this development will become a HMO. Nothing on the evidence suggests that it's going to be a HMO. The application is for a family home, and that's what's being presented here tonight, and that's what's before the planning committee tonight.
Okay, Chairman. After taking legal advice, I'm sorry, our hands are tied because this will be lost at appeal. I feel it will be lost at appeal. I'm happy to. I will go with officers' recommendations on this, providing the conditions that we spoke about, other than the HMO condition, are there. And I'd urge the residents to keep an eye out and follow procedure, building control, etc., moving forward.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. Councillor Burrows, did you want to come in?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I feel the frustrations of Councillor Davies as well regarding the HMO element, but obviously legal has given advice. Officers have said why it won't meet the 6 reasons. I feel the frustrations and of the residents as well, but our hands are tied. It does meet planning requirements, etc., and law, and therefore it has been proposed we accept the officers' recommendations with the conditions, and therefore I will second the proposal to move forward and accept that and vote on it.
Thank you, Councillor. We are proposed, second and thirded. We've had quite a lot of applications for Frase Avenue and a couple of other roads in the borough as well, and you can feel residents' frustration when over a period of time the road starts to change, the street scene starts to change, and if you've lived there for 20, 30, 40 years and you see it evolving, the challenge is once that process starts, the committee's hands are very much tied because of the likelihood of success at appeal, in which case all of the conditions would be lost. And just to shout out as well, Chris and your team, you know, spending a fair bit of time in reducing the size of this application and kind of mitigating the impact on the residents by getting it into a position where we're comfortable to recommend it for approval. So we are proposed and seconded to go with officer's recommendation for approval. Can I have a show of hands from members of the committee in favour of approval? Those against? That's one, and abstaining. So that's 4, 1 against and 2 abstentions. Thank you very much. We now go to agenda item 8, which is 10 Frase Avenue in West Drayton as well. This is back to you again, Chris, for round 2.
Thank you, Chairman. Item 8 relates to an application at 10 Frase Avenue, West Drayton. The application is being placed before members for determination. There's a petition in objection to the proposal, which includes 25 signatures, has been submitted. The petition raises concerns with the potential impact derived from the development in terms of flood risk, character and appearance, and neighbour amenity. The proposal seeks householder planning consent for the erection of a single-storey rear extension, amendments to the side extension roof form, an extension to the existing loft conversion which would bring across the roof over the rear extension, and the formation of a modest crown roof. Finally, the proposal would enlarge the rear dormer window, installation of 2 side-facing roof lights, and implement an external insulation material with an external rendered finish. Here is the location plan shown in the red area. A site constraints plan. Similar to item 7, the application site is located within the Garden City West Drayton area of special local character and is also located within flood zones 2 and 3. Here is a location plan with site denoted within the red edged area. I'll now take you through some of the plans. Here is an existing and proposed elevations and site plan. As shown, the existing roof design would be amended, and this would assist with creating additional habitable space within the roof area. A modest crown roof is proposed. It should be noted that the crown roofs are not an uncommon feature within the area of special local character, and there are examples of crown roofs of a larger scale within the street. As you will see in the rear elevations, the proposal would result in a modest increase in the size of the rear dormer. Officers consider that bringing the roof form over the existing rear extension and altering the side extension would result in an improvement to the design of the rear elevation. I'll just point out some of the key features. So on here you've got the crown roof element. You've got the rear dormer, which is down here. So you've got existing at the bottom and then proposed, so it is only a modest increase. You've also got quite a complex rear elevation at the moment with a few different extensions, creating an awkward rear building line at the back. Bringing this roof form across and over the proposed rear slash side extension, I believe would be an improvement to the existing rear elevation. Here is the existing proposed side elevations. Note the roof would extend modestly deeper than the existing roof form, and you can see the extent of the dormers. The side-facing windows are existing apart from the 2 Velux windows which are in the roof slope. Here are the existing and proposed floor plans. The proposal would result in 1 additional bedroom within the loft area. You can see the modest infill rear extension to the rear and side elevation. So where I refer to that, you can see this recess here. That recess then becomes filled in, and we extend the roof across that proportion of the rear elevation. I have some further let's move to Here we go. Here is a street scene elevation. We can see here the variety of different designs present in the street. I have some further images which I'll present to the committee members in a moment, but this plan demonstrates the extensions and alterations are domestically scaled and would not detract from the character and appearance of the street scene, nor would they appear over-dominant. This section plan illustrates the extent of the accommodation in the roof area, which conforms with the 2.5 floor to ceiling heights. 2.5 metres. Here are some photos. So you've got the existing property here, shown on the left. You've got a modest rear dormer to the front, that's existing. Here is the rear elevation, where I said we've got quite an awkward building line that's created by this undulating roof form there. Existing side extension. So here is the street scene. You can see that front dormers are not uncommon. Again, you've got some front dormers here, two-storey dwelling here. And here we've got an aerial photo. So just in terms of the assessment, this has been mainly covered within the walking members through the slides. However, to summarise the officer assessment within the committee report, officers have assessed the proposal in accordance with the development plan, which requires household extensions to be domestically scaled and therefore subordinate to the existing dwelling, integrate with the street scene and safeguard neighbour amenity. The proposed extensions presented to members are modest, domestically scaled and appropriately designed in order to conform with the character and appearance and established pattern of development within this area. The proposal will not give rise to significant overshadowing of any neighbouring property and primary windows which serve habitable rooms. Turning to flood risk. An FRA has been submitted, and whilst it is noted that this refers to the previous application on the site, the previous application was for a similar development but just slightly larger in scale. Arguably, the potential impact would therefore be greater in the previous application than what is proposed now. Therefore, the principle of the report and its findings are considered to be acceptable. The FRA confirms that the development would not give rise to an increase in potential flood risk, and there is a sufficient mitigation set out within the report which could be imposed in the form of a soakaway, which would reduce the potential increase in flood risk if considered necessary. The Environment Agency have been consulted on the application and have raised no objection to the content of the FRA or the design of the scheme as a whole. A condition is recommended which will secure the construction of the development in line with the findings of the FRA. Based on these points and those presented to members, those set out within further detail in the extensive committee report, the application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Chris. So another petition item. Do we have a Mr. Anuj Raja here? Please come and take a seat. So as the petitioner, you get 5 minutes. As before, when you're ready to start, press the microphone button. We'll have a traffic light system here. 4 minutes on green, 1 minute on amber. And at red, we will bring you to a close. So whenever you're ready.
Can I start with, firstly, to say to the officer that I think my petition, there's been a slight misunderstanding. My main reason for the petition and the 25 signatures is for the construction on the boundary wall. I do apologise if it doesn't stand out quite like that in the petition, but I did put it in bold and italics and everything else, but maybe it was my bad. So I do apologise for that. But it is, while on the positive note, while it's not a massive 2-storey or a 3-storey planning request, my problem is that it is actually they want to build on the boundary wall, and that's the reason for my petition. So I'll start by some of these comments. Firstly, thank you for allowing me to speak today. I'm here with a lot of my residents on Frase Avenue. I go back to the Area of Special Local Character leaflet, page 4, bullet number 9, actually says that any redevelopment of a property or two-story side extensions should be at least 1 metre from the side boundary to maintain the spacious setting of buildings in the garden city, prevent coalescence of development and protect access for maintenance purposes. That's the first thing. The other thing is, I think the planning officer was showing some of the photos about what's on the boundary wall today with the existing structure. If you go back, that photo, I have actually submitted another photo to support exactly that the distance between that boundary wall and the neighbouring property, which is the one where I live at, the magnolia colour wall, the distance at the minute is 900 millimetres at its best, i.e. the widest. Right? If you go further down, which I know you can't see it on this photo quite as clearly, I only know it because I live there, there is a chimney further, a little down that alley, which means that the space is even narrower at that end. Now, I have spoken to the new owners of this property. What they want to use that particular structure for, that's being built on the boundary wall, is for what's called a piano tuition room. So it is going to be used for for commercial purposes. Now, the window that you see in that photo, the window that you see on the magnolia wall, is where my middle daughter, it's her bedroom, but I also double it up as a study for me when I'm working from home, when she's at uni, when my daughter is at uni. So, it being a piano room, and obviously a commercial one, therefore with commercial equipment, is subject to me facing the noise throughout the day when I'm actually working as well. And I do work till late hours, just the nature of my job, really. So that's basically what I wanted to bring to your attention today. The existing side extension that you're seeing at the minute is a temporary lean-to structure. I have provided some photos of the roof and the current roof that is there. It's a Perspex plastic roof, and the structure itself. I understand that they don't want to knock it down, but they want to reinforce the insulations on those. The existing side extension is a temporary lean-to structure, with initially being a post and a plastic roof structure, and the level is at ground level compared to the kitchen floor, which was subsequently infilled with a single skin brickwork and has never been part of the footprint of the original house ever, as shown in the original council site plan, by the way. The plans are incorrect in that the existing ground floor plan shows that the party wall is a 9-inch solid wall, but in actual fact, it's a 4.5-inch garden wall, right, which has been extended in height to take the Perspex plastic roof as shown in the Google Earth photo. Please do refer to the photo in my pack. The rest of the development, I don't really have a problem. As I say, at least they haven't put in a three-floory, 6-bedroom house on there. So at least I'm happy about that. Right? There is 2 side roof Velux windows. I'm not overly emotional about that, but yes, there is that as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Raja. Any questions for the petitioner from members of the committee? No? You may return to the gallery. Thank you.
Can I just also submit one of the letters from the chair of the Garden City Residents Association in support of the area special?
No, the committee, you can leave it there, but the members of the committee can't. You get 5 minutes as a petitioner. The applicant gets 5 minutes as well, should they choose. We have to keep it quite fair. Thank you. Is the applicant or agent, Mr. Angel, here? No? Councillor Sweeting, as the councillor for West Drayton, would you like to speak? We need to get your own name, please, see, just whenever you're ready.
Once again, I declare a non-pecuniary interest. I speak in support of the petition. Number 10 Frase Avenue is unlike the vast majority of other properties in this area of special local character. It's on a very small site. The proposed 4-bedroom property will be squeezed into this plot, and if approved, it will negatively affect the neighbouring property at number 8, with the shared boundary requiring a party wall agreement, and with the front dormer and crown roof which form the basis of the objection to this application from the Council's Conservation Officer. The proposal will not be at least 1 metre from the side boundary to retain the spacious setting requirement of this area of special local character. The extension will be built on the site of the old lead-to, which has been allowed only due to the 10-year rule. The proposed front dormer extension is not, as mentioned, a common feature on this estate. Crown roofs are also not a general feature and are indeed not generally accepted, and nor should this one be approved here as they are contrary to policy. Figures 5 and 6 of the report mention properties number 14 and 3 Frase Avenue as also being built along shared boundaries. However, the major difference is that both of these boundary walls are garage walls, not walls to a habitable space. In addition, both are still well separated from neighbouring properties. It is therefore not reasonable to compare what has been allowed in much larger properties on substantial sites as the reason for these issues being allowed here. Allowing a habitable room on the boundary would set a very unfortunate precedent, not in keeping with the express requirements of this area, namely for properties to be in spacious settings having at least 1 metre between houses. Paragraph 7.13 mentions a slight increase of the site of 0.3 metres would not cause harm to the amenities of the neighbour. However, when the party wall issue is resolved, where it is likely that to ensure the drainage is contained within the site, the roof may well need to be heightened. Again, this problem highlights that this site is small and cramped, where only with these unusual features can a 4-bedroom house be built. One final point, this property is listed as a 6-person HMO, and although ownership has changed, in its previous life it generated considerable issues of concern. The Garden City is a unique area. I therefore ask the committee refuses this application as it negatively affects the immediate neighbour and does nothing at all to protect the integrity of this area of special local character. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sweeting. Any questions for the ward councillor? No? Thank you. You may return to the gallery. Chris, did you want to come back on anything the petitioner and ward councillor said before we open the discussion?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'll clarify a few points. So I appreciate the lead petitioner clarifying the points which the petition is based on. I just want to come back on some of the points that are raised by the local ward councillor with regards to the 10-year rule. The report actually refers to the structure being in place for 10 years. The lawful basis for whether this extension to the property is now considered to be lawful and therefore part of the property which cannot be enforced against is actually 4 years. So not 10 years. It's been in place for 10 years. It only has to be in place for 4 years. In terms of the reference to the crown roofs being general within the street scene, it's not actually mentioned as being general. We refer to them as being not uncommon. So we don't explain in the report that these are a general feature and that they are seen across almost the entire part of the character and appearance of the street scene. We just say that they are not uncommon. We've already seen 3 crown roofs in the previous presentation. In terms of the reference to whether the extension should be set off the boundary, the part of the extension which is to be extended is to the rear. It's a 0.3 metre infill extension. It would not be reasonable or good design grounds to expect that proportion of the wall to be set in from the boundary. Furthermore, the policy that requires buildings to be set in off the boundary is there to protect the terracing effect. That's what we use it principally for. And principally the terracing effect is more associated to 2-storey dwellings where the gap is visually more prominent 2 stories in height. This is not a two-storey dwelling, it's a single-storey dwelling. There are other properties which have been, we've heard from the petitioner, that are extended up to the boundary. I do take into consideration the point about the garage. What officers cannot agree with is that the garage doesn't, the notion that the garage doesn't form part of the habitable space. It can be converted to habitable space without the benefit of planning consent. I think the more important point to address is from the lead petitioner with regards to the noise, because I think that is where he stated that he was really concerned about the level of noise generated due to the potential use. Now, I can't account for what the owner may have explained to the petitioner. It's an existing space. It could well be used as a music, as someone that does piano lessons. I'd be very hesitant in agreeing that that is a commercial activity. I think we heard from the lead petitioner in saying that the study, which is partially used, is used for work also. I wouldn't say that that constitutes as a commercial activity either. People are allowed to operate their work from at home, and it's the degree of harm that we would consider whether or not that actually turns into a commercial operation. What I would say is that part of this new structure is going to need to conform to building regulation standards. That is going to entail a level of insulation which has to pass a building regulations approval. So therefore, even in the event that this is a really modest extension that we're dealing with, that proportion of the extension is going to need to meet a building regulation standard, and that would be a significant improvement to what's there at the moment. So two things. We can't... the existing structure is how it is. It's built up onto the boundary. It's lawful. Yeah. The part that we can control in this assessment is the extension slightly to the rear. That is very modest. It's 0.3 metres. I wouldn't expect members to direct that has to be moved in from the boundary. That wouldn't amount to good design. And a lot of why the lead petitioner and the local ward councillor have said that they want it moved into from the boundary relates to party wall agreements which aren't part of the planning consideration. I think for the reasons that I've set out here and those which are very detailed within this report, a lot of work's got into this report for such a small scale development, I'd still be happy to recommend for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chris. So, committee, who would like to take us away? Don't fight over each other. Councillor Chamdale.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask, although it's not a material planning consideration, were this party wall agreement not be agreed by both neighbours, what is the outcome there? That's one thing, and I think the first time I heard a petitioner actually say it's not a bad development compared to what, that's quite a shock, and he seems to be pretty grounded, so well done there. But he has made a valid concern about should there be joining at the boundary line, and it's a sensible request he's made that his peace and quiet that he would enjoy in his room is going to be disrupted by somebody's non-commercial activities. And I understand the part about building regs, but could it be beefed up a bit more in terms of, especially when he's been told that this is what the room's going to be, so whether there is anything in the process that we operated under that could ensure that he doesn't have to later on in life find out that he can't sit in that room because of that loud noise or whatever disturbance coming from the adjoining wall.
Yeah, I'm struggling to be able to read on screen what that labelling says, but it certainly doesn't refer to it as a piano room of any kind. I think, as with all planning applications, I've got a responsibility to remind members that we are dealing with the plans that are put in front of us. We haven't been privy to any conversation that's taken place between the applicant and the lead petitioner, so we do need to base it on the facts of the case that are presented before us. The committee pack that's been handed to members doesn't indicate that is going to be used for any commercial activity. Should it be used for commercial activity? That would be a matter for enforcement to determine whether the level of impact actually does amount to the description of a commercial premises as opposed to a residential. So I would say that we need to base this decision on the facts of the case, which are quite clear in front of us, and if the residents are unhappy that this property is potentially being used for commercial activity, then that should be reported to enforcement. Thank you.
A question from me. So, Councillor Sweeting mentioned that the property was registered as a 6-bed HMO. It's now been sold. When the property is transacted and a new owner takes over, does the HMO licence carry on, or does that need to be reapplied for?
There's two very different processes. So a 6-person HMO wouldn't require the benefit of planning consent. That can be applied for because it's considered to be a small-scale HMO, so that would be C4. The licensing part of the HMO is completely separate. So whether a license were to be transferred over to a new owner would be a property matter dealt with privately and also between the HMO licensing team. The only thing I would say is that the new owner, or the applicant in this case, cannot account for what a previous owner may have done with the property. Again, we need to base the assessment and the decision on the facts that are in front of us that are on these plans. And a HMO doesn't form part of that. Thank you.
Just on the 1 metre ruling, so you were saying generally in an area of special character that would apply mainly to 2-storey buildings because it's more visible, not to 1-storey?
Not just in an area of special character. Look, we don't deny that there are parts of the policy which may differ in the area of special local characters, but the principle of that part of that, so it's that part of the policy which is effectively a guidance, is to prevent a terracing effect. And at single story, you'd still establish a very prominent visual gap between the properties. So because that's maintained, I wouldn't consider that to be an adequate reason for refusal. We've also got the existing structure in place. So you'd only be, if you were potentially looking at the impact upon the terracing effect, be looking at the rear proportion, which wouldn't be visible anyway. Thank you.
And it's arguably much more aesthetically pleasing than the lean-to that's been there for some time.
Correct. Thank you. Councillor
Davies.
Can we just get some clarity on Councillor Chandale's question on the party wall? What happens? So no, you might have given the answer, but I might have missed it.
The answer would be that the party wall is different legislation from planning. I wouldn't want to make an assumption on what the party wall agreement may, or the legislation may say. I don't think it would be fair for me to do that, and I wouldn't be directing members correctly.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Chairman, if I may.
So just Natalie's going to come in on that
to clarify, Councillor Davies. So that would be, the party wall dispute would be a property matter.
Mm-hmm.
So in the event that there was a dispute, then that's where they need to take it to a property lawyer, property specialist.
It becomes civil, yeah?
It would be.
Yep, perfect. Chairman, with what we've got here, I'm happy to go with officers' recommendations. Effectively, it's adding a roof to an existing structure. I know it's slightly different with the lean-to. That's the biggest concern of the residents, so I'm happy to go with officers' recommendations.
Thank you very much. Councillor Davies. Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, officer. It's possible can we put the condition if in the future they cannot use for commercial? It's possible or no?
So, just to clarify, I'm just looking at the plan now. Apologies for the quality of the plan that was on screen, by the way. I know that's difficult to read. It's listed as a study room, which would be no different to what the petitioner is referred to as the room which neighbours at. Again, the level of activity and harm would be what converts a residential aspect into a commercial, and that would really be for an enforcement officer to determine what the level of impact would be. So it can't be used as a commercial activity to a degree because of the level of harm, and we would need to make that assessment as part of an enforcement investigation. Thank you.
I mean, I'm quite musically challenged, but if I did want to teach piano in my flat, I could do so in the same way that I work from home there is a kind of threshold at some point that it tips into a larger scale commercial operation where planning enforcement would take it up.
Correct, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Councillor Chamdale?
After hearing all that, I'm happy to second Councillor Davies.
Thank you very much. So we are proposed and seconded to go with officers' recommendation for approval. Can I have a show of hands, those in favour of approving the application? Those against? And those abstaining? Thank you. So that is approved. We're now going to revert back to agenda item 6. Thank you, those of you in the room waiting for that. Councillor Davies, you are going to leave.
No, I literally received them today. But anyway.
Thank you. Thanks for your patience, those of you waiting. So we move back to agenda item 6. Councillor Chamdale is just fetching a glass of water. Agenda item 6 is 18 and 20 Wilmer Close, Hayes. I will allow you to get ready to go.
Thank you, Chairman.
I think you're the one who needs a glass of water, really.
I promise I will give everybody a break of my voice in a moment once I finish this. We ready? Yeah. Yeah. Item 6 relates to a application at 18 and 20 Wilmer Close. The proposal is for the change of use of 2 outbuildings to form 2 granny annexes. One is within the boundary of 18 Wilmer Close and the other is within the boundary of number 20. In a moment when I take you through the photos, you will see that both outbuildings are in fact joined together, as are the 2 properties that they relate to. The application site comprises of 18 to 20 Wilmer Close. These are a pair of 2-storey semi-detached properties benefiting from a large rear garden. Here's the constraints plan. As noted on this plan, there are no significant planning constraints on the site. Here's the site plan. The application relates to the change of use of 2 connected outbuildings constructed in the rear gardens of both properties. The certificate of lawful development was issued in 2023, certifying that the construction of the outbuildings for use as a gym or games room, which would be ancillary to the use of each property, was permitted and did not require planning consent. The outbuildings have been constructed but are empty inside and are not currently in use. Here's the floor plans. Permission is sought to use the outbuildings as annex accommodation for the main dwellings at 18 to 20 Wilmer Close. Each outbuilding measures 20 square metres in area and will each contain an ensuite, bedroom and living space. As noted in the officer's report, the proposals conflict with policy DMHD2 of the local plan, as the outbuildings are detached from the main house and contain primary living accommodation, which could in theory be capable of occupation as independent living accommodation. The proposals are, however, proposed as ancillary annex accommodation, and the applicant has provided an updated planning statement which states that the applicant and his brother will be occupying numbers 18 and 20. Both annexes would be used by the applicant's parents who have individual health needs. The application is accompanied by a statutory declaration by the applicant, his brother and his parents. Paragraph 56 of the MPPF 2024 makes clear that the local planning authority should consider whether otherwise unacceptable development could be made acceptable through the use of planning conditions or planning obligations. In this case, a condition may be applied restricting that the accommodation cannot be used as separate living accommodation and that the use must remain ancillary to the residential uses of numbers 18 and 20 Wilmer Close. The report notes 5 recently determined appeals where the inspectors each determined that restrictions could be applied by condition to tie occupation of an outbuilding to a use that is ancillary to the residential use of the main dwelling, in order to prevent use as independent living accommodation. Taking this into consideration, officers consider that conditions 3 and 4 appropriately achieves the same. Ancillary residential use of the outbuildings is therefore considered acceptable in the absence of any clear harm. No external changes are proposed to the outbuildings as shown on these elevations. Here's a bird's eye view plan. This shows the site in its context of the surrounding properties. It should be noted that outbuildings had not been constructed at the time that this image was taken. Here is a photograph taken in February. This shows the completed pair of outbuildings. Photograph of the rear elevations of 18 to 20 Wilmer Close. This photo was taken adjacent to the annex shown. It shows that the rear gardens of both properties. It is noted that no boundary treatment has been constructed to demarcate the gardens of the two houses. Subject to conditions 3 and 4, which tie the use of the outbuildings to a use ancillary to the main dwellings on the site, and in the absence of any demonstrable harm arising from the change of use, the proposals are considered acceptable and are recommended for approval. Before I complete the presentation, I just wanted to raise with members the potential for an appeal on this application, and I think the appeal guidance, particularly around costs, is quite clear in stating that in order for a successful cost application to be defended, the council must demonstrate that it has learned from previous appeal decisions. The report itself highlights 5 recent, and in this particular plan period, as recent as 2023 and 24, appeal decisions where the inspector has concluded that a condition would suffice in tying an outbuilding as ancillary annex accommodation to the use of the main dwelling. So as much as we don't take these applications lightly when they come into planning committee, and also as officers reviewing them, we do need to consider whether or not a refusal would demonstrate that we have learnt from previous planning decisions which have been successfully appealed against. For those reasons, those set out in more detail within the officer's report, we are recommending approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chris. Do we have a Mr. Dadwell here, the petitioner? Please come forward. Thank you for waiting. Take a seat. Do we have slides to go through on this one? Or yeah, sure.
If you want to tell me when you want them
Cool.
moved, I can move them along for you.
Yeah, that first one, in your original report, there was a front view of the property that you had sent.
Yep.
That was the wrong one.
Okay.
So whoever provided that picture, whether it's the planning officer or the owner, it was the wrong one. So this is the correct view. They had provided the view to the left-hand side of, so that's number 20, that's number 18, and I'm there, number 16. To the right, and the view that they provided was 19 and 21 to the left. And just catch glimpses of it, which in a far more better condition than these two properties.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. Yeah, no, that's fine. So as before, you get 5 minutes. There'll be a traffic light system. First 4 minutes on green 1 minute amber, and then when we get to red, or if we get to red, we'll politely bring you to a close. Whenever you would like to start, just press the button on the microphone. Yeah.
So started. So good evening, everyone. I'm representing residents of Wilmer Close, Hazen Drive, and Pillings Close Residents Association. The general point that I want to cover is that this application we've got here has been through complete deceit on changes on what they wanted to do in the first place. It was a games room, stroke gym, and now we've got statutory declarations that the parents are not well and we need these outbuildings. Further to highlight the deceitfulness of trying to get to where they are, which we believe is large, whether licensed or unlicensed HMOs and beds in sheds, which is the biggest concern, which don't exist around there. To get to that point, when the owners bought the properties, they dug up the front, a shared drive on the premises for 1 week. I allowed that. It stayed there for 7 months. And at the end of it, what they had done was illegally tap into the mains water pipe outside, which Affinity Water then had to come out on several occasions to fix, because we were getting brown water through our property. They came out there and said, well, what are you doing? I said, well, it's not me. You can see where this is going. They looked at the pipe work, disconnected it, and said, this is a 50mm pipe that would be used for an industrial size unit or a block of flats, not a normal property. So that was way back. We've had ongoing issues with the pavement at the front, put all there. So it's the deceitfulness to get where we are. There's been no regards for the neighbouring properties, damaged fences. The neighbouring properties have been exposed, which is pretty much after they purchased it. And those are the pictures that will, if you flick through it, I'll quickly. So this was just before there was a adjoining shed. This is right when they started purchase the properties a few months after. Knock that down. If you just go through, and those are straight fences. That's condition while the units are being built. If you keep going on, that's as of 2 days ago, and a final picture is just to show what we see when you stand at the front. So it's just a feel of the people that own the house. There's no regard for the children. I've got vulnerable children in that property. I've asked on multiple occasions. My wife has asked multiple occasions, please can you secure the site? Not want to do it. But the problem here is that they've now said it's for the parents to move in. We feel, the residents all feel, that what if they don't move in? You've then got a permission for somebody to live out the back and it'll be rented out. I can guarantee you that, because the properties, particularly 18, is currently an unlicensed HMO. And I know the council have come out. I don't know what checks were carried out. I wasn't asked. The number 19 wasn't asked. They would have given you plenty of evidence to show you that there, at the moment, sometimes there are 10 people living in that house. There's child's welfare at stake as well. Newborn child is in that house. House is covered in mould. Go inside, have a look. Maybe a site visit by yourselves will help that. So, again, the water pipes, electric pipes have been fed through that channel round the back, which has led to the fencing falling down, because there's a 2-foot trench built right round the sides. I can't repair it myself. I've had builders come out. They said we're not going to touch it because it would just come straight back down. Then my question then goes on to, right, if this is for your parents, why do you need 2 of them? Yeah. No other property has an outbuilding at Wilmer Close, and what are the guarantees that they will be using it for this and it's not rented out? Because I know they've said the properties, section 21, whatever that is in rental terms means. How will the council enforce the use of this? Because originally it was a games room. They have subsequently asked for planning permission, which was rejected, which further shows the intention is there. I know we can only look at what we do. Builders have confirmed that there are bedrooms, beds in both the back room, front room. If you open the doors, you'd go in there. No other, like I said, no other property has it. It's just the intended use that we want to see with it. It's the unlicensed HMO that could potentially end up coming out of this. And the additional parking that it will throw out the front. And this is the classic, we want this, we can't move in June, or our circumstances changed, and you're left with this whole big two houses there that will be rented out. And it's just ruined the absolute sort of street scene at the moment, and what's a community feel on a Wednesday morning, you go and have a look at the litter lying around it. We've had people fly tipping there that turn up. People have broken into my back once already, where I've had to come back and fend people off. I don't know who they are, but the safety of my children and the neighbouring property as well. So there's a complete disregard for the residents that they do. But and I'll go back to the water stuff. So my child has a medical condition.
Politely bring you to a close, if that's okay. Your 5 minutes is up. But thank you, Mr. Dadwell. Any questions from members of the committee for the petitioner? Councillor Chamdale?
Thank you, Chair. So I sympathise with what you've got to say, but it's very important to know, I'm sure the Chair will tell us, that material considerations is what we consider. And a lot of what you said, unfortunately, doesn't fall under our remit. But I understand where you're going from. So basically what you're saying is you believe that the way this property's been managed, you don't believe they're going to end up doing what they're saying.
Yeah,
is that what you're saying?
100%.
I get that, but unfortunately that doesn't fall under a remit.
But
okay, thanks for that.
Any other questions at all? No, thank you very much. You may take a seat in the gallery. Do we have Mr. Barrick or Mr. Hewson here? The applicant or agent, yes? Please come and take a seat. As before, you get 5 minutes to address the committee, 4 minutes on green, 1 minute on amber, and then at red we will ask you to stop.
Great, cheers.
Whenever you're ready.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Excuse me. I'm here to advocate for approval of this planning application for the proposed use of the outbuildings as residential annexes for the applicant's elderly parents, both of whom have specific health-related requirements. This proposal addresses a pressing family need and aligns with broader community and planning objectives. The primary motivation behind this application is the well-being of the applicant's elderly parents. The proposed annexes will provide a safe, comfortable and accessible living environment, allowing them to maintain their independence while being close to their family. This arrangement will enable the applicant to provide the necessary care and support without the need for external care facilities. The proposed development will have a minimal impact on the surrounding area. The outbuildings are already in place and their conversion to residential use will not alter the character or appearance of the application site. There will be no significant increase in traffic or demand on local services since the annexes are intended for family use only. Moreover, as highlighted in the officer's report to committee, the proposed use of the outbuildings as residential annexes aligns with the current planning policies and guidelines. The National Planning Policy Framework emphasises the importance of providing a range of housing options to meet the diverse needs of the population, including the elderly and those with disabilities. By approving this application, the committee will support the NPPF's objectives and demonstrate a commitment to inclusive and adaptable housing solutions. The proposed development complies with local planning policies that encourage the use of existing buildings for residential purposes. Whilst the concerns of neighbours are noted, the matters raised are not relevant, or at least they are not of a materiality and magnitude such could reasonably lead to refusal of the application. Importantly, planning permission would be required to change the use of the annexes to self-contained dwellings, and this issue is also addressed by the proposed conditions 3 and 4. It is also noted that several recent appeal decisions have allowed similar developments within Hillingdon. With regards to the existing dwellings, I am informed that these are currently let to families, but that Section 21 eviction notices have been served, with it being my client's intention to move into 18 Wilmer Close as soon as possible after the current tenants of the property have moved out. It is my client's brother's intention to move into 20 Wilmer Close as soon as possible also. In conclusion, we respectfully urge members of the committee to approve this application for use of the outbuildings as residential annexes. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hewson. Any questions from members of the committee? Councillor Chamdale.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned a previous other application being approved by the inspectorate, but have they been similar in size that you're aware of?
sorry. If you just turn your microphone on.
Sorry. I did as well. Sorry. The principal factor, deciding factor, it seems to me, in these appeals has been where the amount of garden has been reduced to such an extent that there's not enough, seen as not being enough amenity space for occupiers of both the existing dwelling and the annexes. In that regard, we have a very large garden here, and so it's my understanding that if this was to get to that stage of appeal, it would be allowed on the basis that, as officers have said, firstly, there are conditions there to control any inappropriate use of the annexes that might change the use to residential dwellings, and also that there is enough amenity space preserved for occupiers of the dwellings.
Well, I haven't seen any, but in terms of it's two separate buildings that have been built there, and the petitioner did make the comment that why is it still going to be retained as two if the parents are going to be living there? Because my thought process is that if it's two previous gyms, two previous pool rooms, or sports rooms or leisure rooms, that one would suggest there'd be a wall in between the garden. So it is two properties, but here to me that looks like one property, be it two houses, and you've got two separate. So would the plans not be more succinct with the use that has been proposed to have a room rather than two separate?
Yeah, sure, of course. I can only say that was my initial impression as well. I can also only say I was informed that it is my client's parents' living arrangements to live close to but separate. It may seem odd. It did to me. I can't really say any more than that.
And finally, in terms of trying to get over objections, and really, if the parents are, would it not be a better fit to have an extension a rear extension on the existing buildings itself? With your experience, and I'm sure you would agree with that it would be better to rather than to have, I don't know what the distance between the main house, and the end of that looks quite long. I think they will need a sort of golf buggy or something to get down the other end.
Yes, I mean, I've thought much the same thing of any detached structure, whether it be an office pod, for example. I've had it said to me that would people actually end up using those facilities? When the further away you get from the house, the less it appears to be usable. I see that, and yet at the same time, it is something that I've seen used successfully in that way by family members who perhaps appreciate some distance, maybe not too much, of course, but yeah. I mean, I would agree that the standard granny annex, I believe, probably was attached to the main dwelling. That would have been the original idea of many granny annexes, but I can only say that since that time, I've seen this arrangement used successfully.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. You had a question.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, Mr. Chamdali already asked my question.
Councillor Chamdale, no Chamdali.
Chamdale, yeah. Sorry, apologies for that. Why these elderly people, they live separate, it's no makes sense. I'm not satisfied with that.
Okay.
Could you give us more details?
I cannot. I've been informed by my client, the applicant, Mr. Barrich, that this is their chosen manner of living. Yeah. I can't say any more than that. Anecdotally, I did quite query it myself. Yeah.
Councillor Sansapuri?
Yeah. Sorry, the picture is not very clear. Who is living at the main properties now?
Sure. Yeah. I'm informed that they are each let to separate families on that basis. Yeah.
So it means at the moment the both properties are on rent. Their intention is to move it there. They are not living there at present.
No, not at present. Elsewhere in the borough.
Sorry, no, sorry. We can interrogate or ask questions, but yes, you've had your 5 minutes. They get their 5 minutes. A question on the, because obviously you spoke around the applicant. Has got vulnerable parents who presumably are of an older age that need care and support. I just don't see it looking at that photo. It's the entire back garden's unsecure. Would you put elderly people at the back of the garden? There's no footpath, there's no way for nurses or carers or doctors to easily get through. I mean, I know that stuff can be added, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I was going to say the same thing. At the moment, that absolutely. I've been to site, and that's pretty much how it looks at the moment, with a building that was evidently stood previously just there has been taken down, and the site it's lacking boundary fences between the two properties. It's open to the front as well, although that's in common with other properties around there as well. But yeah, there's no pathway to those, no clear pathway other than over the grass to those buildings currently. As you say, these are things that could, and I presume will, be added in due course if the application was to be approved. The current residential environment is not what I would expect it to be, no, but this can all be done, of course, without permission, didn't necessarily need to form part of this application. And I presume will be.
Thank you. Any other questions for the agent? Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Chair. You said the owners are not living in the main property, yes?
No, not currently.
So, why they apply for the elderly people, they look after the elderly people live in the garage? Or, would you give up?
I can only say as said, it's the intention. Currently, bought a number of years ago. The properties were bought around the same time, just a few months apart, a number of years ago. They've been rented out since that time. The long-term plan, as I'm told, has been for some time to use the main properties in the manner suggested. And then, of course, in more recent times, the idea to use the annexes the existing outbuildings as residential annexes.
Thank you. No further questions. You may return to the gallery. If you could just turn the microphone off as well. So in terms of ward councillors speaking on this application, nobody is, but it needs to be noted by the committee that Councillor Davies, who's left the room, he obviously is substituting Councillor Higgins this evening on the committee, which means he is unable to make a representation here in person, unfortunately, but he would like it noted that he did submit a written representation against the application. Chris, did you want to cover off anything before we open to discussion? Lots to pick out.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think thank you to the petitioner. It's obviously a difficult task to try and note all of your comments within a 5-minute window, so I appreciate that, and I think we get the gist of what's happened on the site previously. I do agree with Councillor Chandel. We need to sort of focus the matters on what's material and what's not, so I'll try my best to try and focus back on those. I think what I've heard from the petitioner, having looked at the planning history of the site, is that there is this allegation, and quite a strong allegation, of the property being used as a HMO. So I think we'll park that to one side for the moment, and we'll come back and we could potentially offer a solution to deal with that. Just in and around the use of the property as it is now. So it is quite clear, and there's evidence being provided to case officers that the property is currently rented. We have received evidence of a Section 21 notice, which serves notice on the current tenants. It wouldn't be for case officers to ensure that eviction process is carried out. However, we do have a set of appeal decisions which we've gone through in very great detail to make sure that we are content with the recommendation. Just want to come back to Councillor Chandal's point about whether any of the previous approvals that were, the allowed appeals were similar in scale to what we see here. We do have to remember that although this has come forward as what appears to be one great big building, it isn't. It's actually two buildings. It's a joint application. So effectively the applicant could have put in an application for number 18 and one for 20. They've chosen to pay the additional fee and bring it in as one planning application, but it is effectively an application for the change of use of an outbuilding on each site, although it's evident that they're connected. It's not uncommon for buildings to be connected across a boundary. We have seen that before. I've seen it with rear dormers, which are not associated in ownership at all, but they are connected. So in terms of the scale of these outbuildings would measure approximately 40 square metres in internal area. In comparison to the appeal on 50 St Martin's approach, which is listed as one of the allowed appeals in the planning committee report, that appeal was allowed at 37.8 square metres, so a very modest and de minimis increase upon what was previously allowed. Within that appeal, it actually showed that the internal floor area would be serviced by a kitchen, a bedroom, a toilet, so all of the amenities that you need for segregated living accommodation. You'll notice on the plans that whilst this has been labelled an annex, what you do not have depicted on the plans is a cooking area. So you have a lounge, a bedroom, a shower and WC. So what we're saying to members is we have taken a great deal of consideration on this application. We've looked at the appeal history. We've actually found appeal decisions which show that the development could definitely accommodate segregated living accommodation, and even upon refusing that with what would arguably be a worse layout shown on plan, we have not been able to defend an appeal. In that particular application, we actually managed to defend a cost application. In this application, I wouldn't be so confident given the context that I gave you during the presentation about learning from previous appeal decisions.
So in summary on that, so is it fair to say, without putting words in your mouth, we as Hillingdon Council don't like these types of developments necessarily?
Yep.
We've rejected similar applications before.
Yep.
They've been appealed. The appeals have been successful.
Correct.
And effectively we have a legal statutory obligation to learn from what the inspectorate measures through appeals and change our approach moving forward.
Correct. We've also gone above probably what the boundaries would require us to. So it's only normal to obtain a statutory declaration in the event of an existing lawful development certificate, where someone's trying to demonstrate that the use of a building has been occupied for that use over a specific period of time. So we've obtained a statutory declaration, Section 21 notice, amended planning application forms, all to try and secure the best possible scenario for the petitioner and the residents that could be impacted by this development. So we've really tried as hard as possible to get to a point where, although it's still on balance, we are in a position where we need to recommend approval. What I would say is the point about the HMO is different to the previous application we saw on Frase Avenue, where the property arguably was designed too large to be converted to a C4 without the benefit planning consent. In this application, although you won't see it on screen because the internal floor area of the existing properties doesn't form part of the application, previous applications do indicate that these are 2 to 3 bedroom properties, in which case they could be capable of being converted lawfully to a C4 without the benefit planning consent. So what I would offer to members, if we are concerned about the potential for these outbuildings to be used in conjunction with a HMO, that we restrict PD rights on this property so that the potential conversion to a HMO would require the benefit of planning consent. The petitioner would then be able to, if he saw fit to, raise a petition, and if in line with the scheme of delegations, that would be brought back to members to determine. Yep.
Thank you, Chris.
Just one other point. Sorry to interrupt. I do understand, and I think members did a commendable job in interrogating the report and also the applicant's representative. I do think a landscaping condition should be required here. If we are saying that this outbuilding is going to be used by elderly people, the surfacing needs to be provided to demonstrate that they can access it. So I do think a landscaping condition should be added, which is along the lines of access, permeable surfacing provided to both the main dwelling and obviously to back and forth from the annex. And that should be level access to be provided. Yep.
Thank you very much. Councillor Burrows, you were first.
Thank you, Chairman. After listening to the petitioner and then the agent for the applicant and obviously what officers have said, I still feel quite uncomfortable with this, to be honest. It doesn't sit right with me from what I've seen, what I've heard. And as much as it pains me, I would actually like to defer for a site visit so that the committee can actually see what there is there, so that we can actually look at what's there and make our own judgment based on that. I know that we don't like to go to before a planning inspectorate who comes down from Leicester or wherever he comes from, and we have to learn from our previous lessons, etc., etc. I get all that, but I think we need to go for a site visit on this, and I hope my fellow committee members agree. And that's no disrespect to what officers have said here, but it just doesn't sit right with me at the moment. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Burrows. Councillor Chamdale.
Thank you, Chair. I get what officers are saying, that we've got to learn from our previous experiences from what the inspectorate have come back with. But that's on 4 occasions. So either we're not getting it right often enough, or the inspectorate are getting more easy with their decisions or loose. The applicant has put forward reasons for why he needs this converted to living accommodations for his parents. He's supplied verification from doctors, so he's ticked the boxes on all of that. So really, in real terms, does it fit the bill? It should fit the bill because he ticks all the boxes. But looking at the plans, looking at the pictures that we've seen, listen to the petitioner and listen to the applicant's representative, who I must say was extremely honest in his approach from sometimes what we hear. He doesn't agree with a lot of it himself. It's 2 separate buildings. It might be 2 separate applications, but there's no garden wall in the middle. Yeah, it's quite clear for me. It might be 2 separate, one application on 2 separate properties, but if that's 2 separate properties, there's some sort of demarcation that this is your building, this is mine. I look after this, and you look after this. And as with Councillor Burrows and all my fellow committee members, I think we've been here long enough, and we can smell it. Unfortunately, smelling it is not part of material planning considerations. I'm not a great fan of site visits unless it's absolutely necessary, but I think Councillor Burrows has raised a valid point, Chair, that I think it would be beneficial with what we've heard from the applicant, the petitioner and the officers, that we go and see it ourselves and make a judgment on there, as to what we saw, what we heard and how it ties in. But I honestly, looking at the pictures, if you look at the picture of the actual outhouse, it's been built for a playroom, whatever. If you look at it, and it's been built for quite a while, there's no steps there neither. It just doesn't look, I can zoom it in quite clearly, and you can see it's nearly 3 or 4 bricks from the floor up to the floor. I'm 6 foot, and I'll be struggling to get over that, especially if I've used it half an hour in the gym and my heart rate's gone up. I agree with, I don't know what the rest of the committee members will say. I will definitely go for a site visit.
Thank you, Councillor Chamdale. Councillor Gaelic.
Thank you, Chair. I would like some clarification about the statutory declarations. Were they offered independently by the applicants or applicant, or was it suggested to them by the planning team to help them gain? Because they're declaring that it's not proposed to be used as an independent living accommodation. So the declaration, I believe it's sworn somehow in front of a solicitor of someone. So I want to know if they offered it on their own volition or was it suggested to them. And a second clarification is, did you say that there is a kitchen in those outbuildings, although it's not on the plans?
So what you're approving is what you see on the proposed plan here. So you see a lounge, bedroom, shower and WC. The annex does allow for the building to be used as a separate living accommodation, but it would be ancillary separate living accommodation. Where I referred to a kitchen was on a different appeal decision, one of the ones which is set out in the report that's before you.
Right, okay, so I've got a second question.
Sure.
Regarding the two separate letters from GP, apparently those parents who have special needs are not allowed in the main house, they are dumped in the outbuilding. And according to the GP, it's essential that they have facilities, provision of ground floor cooking facility, which is not offered. So justification in this letter from GP hasn't got any grounds.
When you refer to ground floor kitchen accommodation, would the existing property have a ground floor kitchen? Because if it does, that would be ground floor kitchen accommodation.
So what you're saying is, I guess, is the doctor's report saying if they were living on their own, they would have to have a kitchen on the same level that they live and sleep. But that is of no relevance to an outbuilding because in theory it's of the same level.
So I think the point I was trying to raise earlier was this layout that we're seeing now is actually considered to be less alike to fully segregated living accommodation, separate from the main dwelling, which is what you would not associate an annex to be, than what has been allowed at a recent appeal. So at a recent appeal, 50 St Martin's approach, which is set out in the committee report, that outbuilding contains a shower, a toilet, a kitchen, a piece of living accommodation, so a living room, and a bedroom within 37.8 square metres. So that's roughly around the size of a studio apartment. Although each of these individually amounts to 40, what you don't see is that same layout on here. So arguably, the annex level of it is still maintained because there would be accommodation within the main dwelling that still may need to be used. I think just on you raised a separate point earlier just about the statutory declaration. I think I was, maybe I wasn't clear when I referred to statutory declarations earlier, but I did mention that the statutory declarations are not a requirement in terms of validation of this application. So they wouldn't have had to have been provided. What we've tried to do is because we are not content with this type of development. We do not advocate for this type of development everywhere. And we are resistant of it as a planning department. We have a policy in place that does resist it. We have tried to ensure that the applicant's gone above and beyond to secure more than just a condition that was secured in the previously allowed appeals. So we've obtained a registered statutory declaration which declares that this person is going to live in this property and they are related to the individual that owns the property. Thank you.
Thank you.
Clarification that, so according to the GP's letter, the cooking provision on the ground floor will be in the house, but the toilet and washing facilities will be in the outbuilding?
It could be.
The self-contained?
Yeah, we're approving the layout which is shown on that plan. There isn't a kitchen shown on that plan. I'm not disputing what's in the GP's letter. The GP is probably providing the letter on the basis of the medical need rather than what the layout that is shown on that plan is. We can only assess the application based on what's on that plan, and it doesn't denote a kitchen on that plan.
Thank you. Councillor Sansapuri.
I know the officer has explained everything very clear picture, but their intentions are very, very doubtful. He is not living here. His brother is not living here. His parents are not living with them, and moreover, they need a separate dwelling. They're asking for separate. Even the parents are living in one dwelling. What are they going to do with the second one? So I know the legal position may be different, but their intentions are very, very doubtful.
Thank you. And so we are.
Just quickly, the application is for ancillary living accommodation. So that's what's in front of you. That's what you need to make a decision on. There are conditions in place, 3 and 4, that would control that as ancillary accommodation. If the buildings were used as separate living accommodation, that is separate to this application, and enforcement action could be taken. So that's what's in front of members. That's what you need to consider. Just want to clarify that point.
Sure. No, thank you. And before we come on to the couple of sort of additional conditions you mentioned, we are proposed and seconded for a site visit. I just wanted to get through the questions for those that had already asked. Can I have a show of hands from members, those who are in favour? So I've gone through the questions that were, the hands were up before we were proposed and seconded. You've had 3 questions. Is the answer to this question likely to impact the way you vote for a site visit?
It's not a question. I just wanted to ask if there is possibility of adding another condition that only immediate family would be allowed to live in those annexes.
So I think it's a fair point. The reason why I'm going to the vote on the site visit is if we do defer this application for a site visit, it will come back to committee, and that will be the opportunity to discuss through the conditions in addition to the other ones that Chris had mentioned. So we are proposed and seconded for a site visit. Can I have a show of hands, those in favour of a site visit? Okay, that's 5. I will be against. So that is now deferred for a site visit. Thank you very much. Sorry, we were talking so long I forgot about Councillor Davies. He'd left the room. Liz is just going to retrieve him. Welcome back, Councillor Davies. Welcome back, Liz. So we now move on to agenda item 9, 148 to 154 High Street, Uxbridge. Alan, a change of voice after 2 hours.
All good? Yep. So good night at this stage. The application size is 148 to 154 High Street, Uxbridge. I want to start by drawing your attention to the committee addendum sheet. There are minor tweaks to Condition 5, the construction management plan, and also Condition 7, the cycle lift, and that's just following further input from Transport for London. There's also a brief verbal update. The committee report referred to one motorcycle parking bay being removed from Belmont Road, but not being replaced. However, the council's highways team has since identified space to re-provide that motorcycle parking bay on High Street near Whelan's Pub and the German Doner Kebab Shop. The final update is that I had omitted 2 proposed drawings by error on condition 2, the approved drawings condition, so that's just 2 proposed drawings to be added. The application is for the demolition of the existing buildings and construction of a mixed-use development comprising of a 162-key hotel, 320 co-living homes, and 1,115 square metres of ground floor commercial floor space. Just a point of clarification on the retail space, the existing site consists of 3,582 square metres of retail accommodation, and the proposal, as I said, would be 1,115. So this would be a net loss of 2,467 square metres of retail space. The proposal also includes the creation of a 2,000 square metre public square at the centre of the development. A new pedestrian route would also be included from Belmont Road through to the High Street, and a widened, realigned and significantly improved Coxyard publicly accessible pedestrian route would also be provided between Bakers Road and High Street. Here's the location plan showing the application site at the corner there of High Street and Belmont Road. Bit of a lag. And then the site constraints plan here. The site's within Uxbridge Metropolitan Town Centre, a primary shopping area and an office and hotel growth location. Policy SA26 of the Council's local plan also designates the site for new homes, stating that the site is considered suitable for residential-led mixed-use development, which this proposal is. The site is within an area, an air quality management area and an air quality focus area, and within a broader Uxbridge archaeological priority area, as well as potentially contaminated land. Surface water flooding impacts a small patch of land towards the centre of the site. There are no listed buildings on the site, and it is not within a conservation area or area of special local character. Notwithstanding, the site is between the Old Uxbridge Windsor Street Conservation Area, which contains several listed buildings and 3 war memorials. Here's just an aerial image highlighting the site's location and its context. The site location plan, and then the wider context plan here, as well as the block plan. I'm sure you're very familiar with this part of the High Street. This is existing site photos showing the site and the poor architectural quality of the existing building and the existing poor quality environment of the Coxyard pedestrian route between Bakers Road and the High Street. I'll move through the existing plans now. On screen is the existing basement plan. We've got the existing floor plan, first floor plan, second floor roof plan, and there's the existing elevations drawings, existing elevations again, and the existing sections. Bear with me, trying to get this remote going. Here's the proposed site plan then, with the surrounding context on the screen at the moment. And then this is just a closer look at the proposed plan showing the ground floor of the development, which would front the High Street, Belmont Road and Bakers Road. You can also see here the proposed landscaping with the 2 publicly accessible pedestrian routes through the site, and the new public square at the centre of the site. The new public square will provide a notable public benefit, serving the town centre in a way that doesn't exist in the immediate area at present. The plan also includes indicative street tree planting outside of the red line boundary, which would be delivered alongside replacement paving on the public footpaths around the site, offering another public benefit. And these public realm improvements would be delivered through the Section 278 agreement. The legal heads of terms also include a Section 38 agreement for the developer to transfer land in front of the building line on Belmont Road and Bakers Road to Hillingdon Council, and also a Section 247 stopping up order agreement for the developer to take ownership and ongoing maintenance and management of the public access through Cox Yard. There's also a legal agreement clause to ensure the new public square would remain publicly accessible in perpetuity. And then this here is showing the planting strategy that we've secured during the planning process, which would deliver the welcome parcel of publicly accessible green space within the town centre. And then similarly then the urban greening factor plan, which has been secured during the planning process. Next then we have 14 slides which I'll go through detailing the proposed floor plans, starting with the basement, proposed basement plan here on screen. This shows there would be 9 disabled person parking bays within the basement, 4 to serve the co-living units and 5 to serve the hotel. This is an acceptable level of car parking provision given the highly accessible location with a public transport accessibility level of 6A here, and also within the context of other comparable London co-living scheme precedents for car parking provision. These parking spaces would be accessed by a ramp from Bakers Road, while the 263 long stay cycle parking spaces within the basement would be accessed via a designated cycle lift, which is accessed or would be accessed from the public square. Here is the ground floor plan. The hotel entrance is shown on the High Street towards the corner of Belmont Road, retail floor space fronting the High Street and Belmont Road, and the co-living entrance at the corner of Belmont Road and Bakers Road. I'll just flick through the rest of the proposed plans and we can come back to them if needed then during questions. There's quite a few. And then this is showing then the roof plan. You can see the proposed terrace for the roof terrace for the co-living, and there's also a roof terrace, small roof terrace for the hotel use there at roof level also. Moving on to the proposed elevation drawings then, this slide shows part of the Belmont Road elevation. The development would range in height from 8 stories to 10 stories, reflecting the height and scale of neighbouring developments. This is the Bakers Road elevation. The development's facades would mostly be brick, using 3 different brick types. This drawing also shows the arched pedestrian passageway leading through to the proposed public square and then onto the High Street. The passageways, the 2 passageways, would be clad with white tiles. 2 different types of cladding would be used for the proposed hotel elevation shown here on screen at the moment. There we go. And we have secured the external materials during the planning assessment process, front-loading the building's details, and the use of these acceptable external materials are secured by condition. Some more elevations on Belmont Road here and Bakers Road. The proposed rear elevation onto the public square and the flank wall elevation, and remaining courtyard elevation shown here along with the flank wall. And again, this is another public square elevation shown here. I've referred to these 2 passageways these pedestrianised routes through the site. So this is just showing the Belmont, the route from Belmont Road. Again, that would be clad with white tiles. And this again here is the pedestrian passageway from Baker's Road. Next, there are some existing and proposed views from the submitted views assessment, and then I'll be just moving on to the conclusion. So this is the existing view from outside of Tesco, looking down the High Street with the application site towards the end of the view here on the left. And here's the proposed view. Whilst the viewpoints show a notable change to the townscape, the height, scale and mass is reflective of other neighbouring developments in the town centre, notably the residential blocks above the pavilions and the residential office and hotel developments on Baker's Road, and is considered acceptable within the highly accessible town centre location. Again, here is an existing view from the Uxbridge station with Premier Inn on the right and the application site on the left. And the proposed view here reflecting the height and scale of the existing Baker's Road development on the right. The final view then is looking down Belmont Road towards the High Street, with the application site towards the centre on the left hand side. And again, the proposed view which reflects the scale of Armstrong House and Middlesex House on top of the Pavilions shopping centre. So then just coming to the I suppose assessment part of the application and to the conclusions, a note with regards to the affordable housing. Referring to paragraph 7.37 of the committee report, co-living differs from traditional C3 residential use because the affordable housing provision secured by the authority can be either upfront cash in lieu payment to the local authority or an in perpetuity annual payment to the local authority. In either case, the applicant must provide a contribution which is equal to 35% of the units, or if this is not viable, submit a financial viability assessment that the local authority and the GLA robustly test. The applicant has in this case submitted a viability assessment which has undergone several reviews by the Council's viability consultant as well as the GLA. The applicant has agreed to pay the Council an in lieu affordable housing contribution of £3.6 million, which would be subject to early and late stage viability reviews to ensure that if the scheme's viability does improve, then the Council would capture an appropriate uplift in any value. This sum has been accepted by the Council's viability consultant and by the GLA as the maximum viable amount in this particular case. The GLA's Stage 1 comments did not raise any objection to the principle of the development. Referring to paragraph 7.10 of my committee report, the principle of the 162 Key Hotel is acceptable as the site's designated within a hotel growth location. Referring to paragraphs 7.20 to 7.23 of the committee report, the loss of the office space has been accepted given its extended vacancy, the nearby office vacancies and the applicant's robust marketing evidence which exceeds 2 years. With regards to the co-living homes, this complies with the site's designation for residential-led mixed-use development. The scheme has been assessed against policy H16 of the London Plan, which is specific to this kind of recognised co-living housing type, and also to the Mayor's adopted, this is a tongue twister I think, a large-scale purpose-built shared living London Plan guidance document. This guidance was adopted in 2024. The proposed studios would range from 20 square metres to 24 square metres, while the accessible studios would range from 31 square metres up to 36 square metres, which complies with the London Plan and the London Plan guidance that states that co-living studios should be no less than 18 square metres and no more than 27 square metres, with the accessible units expected to be between 28 square metres and 37 square metres. The GLA's Stage 1 comments recognise the co-living scheme provides or performs well against the London Plan guidance and stated that the studio layouts are well planned. Co-living communal facilities and amenity provision would be distributed throughout the building, including communal kitchen, dining rooms, laundry facilities, residence gym, cinema and co-workspace. The proposed co-living amenity space provision complies with the London Plan and London Plan guidance. The denser one-bedroom nature of the proposed development would be appropriate and is supported in this sustainable location, highly accessible to public transport, immediately adjoining Uxbridge Station and bus interchange, and broadly complies with policy H10 of the London Plan with regards to housing mix, with the housing mix addressed in more detail in paragraphs 7.30 to 7.36 of the committee report. Regarding the ground floor commercial floor space, the applicant has engaged in the pre-application advice process where officers considered what type of land uses would be most desirable and result in the greatest public benefit. The High Street and wider town centre lack attractive public open space. Therefore, a greater emphasis has been placed on unlocking the site's potential to address this need rather than focusing on re-providing the entirety of the existing 3,500 square metres of retail space. As mentioned at the start, there would be a loss of 2,467 square metres of retail space. The GLA has stated in their Stage 1 comments that the proposed reduction in retail space does not raise strategic concerns, noting that the site is currently under-occupied and acknowledging the constraints associated with providing the new public round square. Considering the challenges and retail design changes informed by the market, the harm from the loss of retail is not considered to be substantial and is outweighed in any case by the benefits created by the proposed development. The development would optimise the underutilised brownfield site led by design, replacing a poor quality building and undesirable existing Coxyard pedestrian route. It is an appropriate location for dense development given its town centre location and excellent connections to public transport. The scheme would deliver 320 co-living homes, a new 162 key hotel and modern retail floor space which would contribute towards the town centre's vibrancy. Alongside the redevelopment's contribution to the town centre's vitality, notable public benefits include the addition of a new 2,000 square metre public square, new and improved pedestrian permeability and significant public realm improvements. The officer's recommendation is to grant, subject to conditions, legal agreement and Stage 2 referral to the GLA. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Before we open it out to questions, just for myself and the millions of people watching, could we just elaborate on co-living? Sounds like it's not a term that's come up at the committee for a while. When you have, where are we, 380, was it? 320 co-living. It sounds rather friendly. Just hope you could just, for the members of the committee and those watching, just elaborate what it is.
Well, thank you, Chairman. It's a good question because this is only the second co-living scheme that this borough has reviewed. So I think the easiest way to describe it is it's now a recognised accommodation type, hence the adoption of the LPG by the GLA. So what it does is it's purpose-built rented accommodation, and they are smaller units than your normal size studio. So the London Plan sets out specific sizes for C3 residential accommodation, that's traditional housing accommodation, and it states that a studio apartment should measure no less than 37 square metres. In this particular case, there's now an adopted document, so an LPG, which states that the accommodation type can measure anywhere up to 28 square metres and should measure no less than 17 square metres. So it's a smaller type of accommodation. It's appropriate in highly sustainable locations. So we've heard from Alan already that this is in a PTAL 6A, so you wouldn't really be able to get any more of a sustainable location than this. And one of the benefits that it brings forward is within our town centres, we understand that there's a challenge post-COVID. That's partly the reason for why you see a reduction in the amount of retail space being provided. This level of accommodation would bring in significant footfall to the town centre. So it not only provides additional accommodation and the housing types of people who may not necessarily be able to get onto the market or rent accommodation in the ordinary C3 market that isn't highly expensive. But what it would also do is it brings forward vitality to our town centre purely by the dense nature of the development. Yeah. Okay. Just
answers my question.
All right, that's fine.
Yeah. Councillor Davies.
Thank you, Chairman. I like the idea of this, but we need to get it right now because it has the potential to go drastically wrong. So I've got a number of questions. Can we just confirm, is it 320 co-living or 210? Because the report says 210.
It's 320. I'll have to check the report for the reference to 200.
I have 320 on page 104.
Okay, I may have read it wrong. I thought I had it at 210, so I'll take that one back.
Retracted.
I'll retract that one for now. Are we happy, sorry Chairman, if I may, are we happy with 9 parking spaces for potentially over 400 people? Because if I note that the Chimes has, from my calculations and looking online, the local is 1,500 spaces. On a Saturday, it potentially with staff in, everything, if we know what parking's like at the moment in the area, we're struggling and we're going to add an additional potentially 400 cars maybe, within reason, let's say, with the number of people in that property, visitors, etc. Yep.
Yes, Chair. Well, we have to remember that the proposal is there's a small retail element which is already retail at present, and there won't be a public car park at all. It's just for a select few of the residents who require disabled parking bays, and the sustainability aspect comes into it. As mentioned earlier, you can't get any higher, and the regional London plan does promote a car-free development. And that goes for the hotel use as well, which doesn't really have any prescriptive parking standard. So we're certainly we won't be losing any public space. But saying that, I know there's obviously a public car park currently as a 130 space basement car park, which you're probably aware of, which is a very substandard car park. But the thing is, we're happy to lose that because we've done an internal appraisal on we can certainly make up the spaces within the existing car parking stock. So we're happy to do that. So essentially, there should really be no visual or any difference in demand as compared to now.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll let others go first and I'll come back.
Could you, yes, very quickly?
Sorry, just very quickly, just to elaborate on what Richard said, the ramp, having worked on this scheme for about 5 or 6 years, presented a significant challenge. I think both us and the applicant would have recommended that we have no parking and it was truly car-free. This is a car-light scheme. But we've put the car parking and utilise it within the basement itself to try and conform with the accessible standards. So I think that's the important part to remember.
Thank you. Just before I go to Councillor Chamdale, the 17 to 28 square metre co-living standard, is this a Mayor of London, Greater London push?
Sure, correct, yeah.
Yes, it does seem very, very small. But that's not my opinion is invalid in this discussion, but I just wanted to clarify that. Councillor Chamdale.
Thank you, Chair. One of my questions you've answered. This 17 to 28 frightens me. I mean, I remember when my daughter went to university and I saw her digs. They were small, but they seemed like a penthouse compared to these. My question is definitely on the parking. I understand what you're going for, this lovely ideal of parking free, no cars. But my concern is, what impact are you going to have on the surrounding areas? Now, a lot of the roads around there are with PMSs. So how we are going to actively, in real life, going to deal with this? Because you've got, if my maths is correct, 320 and 162 is 482. So potential of even 10% of that. That's one question. And Chair, if I can ask the other one, is something close to my heart, which is retail. Now, we're losing over 65, 66, or close to 70% of retail space. Now, in your officer's report, it says a lot of the, as far as I remember, most of those units are taken up all the way around. So, in terms of saying there's not really much of an impact, how is that sort of justified? Because surely with that additional volume of people, which is welcomed greatly, I think it's fantastic to have lots of people coming into shops and buying and spending money. But how is that going to balance out with what we have at the moment?
Thank you, Councillor. This is a principal issue that we discuss very heavily, and I think, as Alan referred to, in terms of the commercial space, we are guided by the experts in this type of field. We've got significant issues in the high street in terms of not just vacancy, but short-term tenancies, so short-term lets. What we're providing here is a significant improvement in terms of the design of the units, which has been informed by market evidence. So whilst we're saying that there is a reduction, I mean, there's quite a bit of that's contained within one particular unit, which is WH Smith's. So those larger retailers that we've seen that there isn't any longer a market for, we're now providing slightly smaller units. They're more flexible, and they're designed to be attractive to longer term tenants. So hopefully not only will you have longer term tenants, but you'll also be increasing the footfall within that area, and with less space within this particular area, it may improve the vitality and safeguard some of the other retail within the town centre. Just in response to the parking point, we do have a head of term which restricts future occupants from joining a local PMS. Thank you.
Thank you. Two very good questions, good answers. I had one just on a sizable contribution, £105,000 for Transport for London, towards measures to improve the bus infrastructure and waiting environment within the London Borough of Hillingdon. Is that as specific as we can make it? Because if I'm thinking about this site, it backs onto, we would call it a bus station. It's just a series of bus stops and a roundabout that is a really poorly designed, that if we're going to rebuild this new very sizable development here, can that money be spent on improving that specifically? Are we allowed to tell Sadiq Khan what to do?
Are you querying that the contribution isn't big enough, or you're querying what we're going to spend it on?
So it's the contribution in terms of its size, fine. If that's what we deem appropriate. Okay. It's more the fact that it's written that it's just for anywhere in the borough. Yeah. So we don't want that being spent on a new bus stop in Harlington when this is the development in Uxbridge. So in previous planning committee years, we've probably, as case officers, given too much of a description within our heads of terms, and that's led to real difficulty in actually spending money. I can tell you that work is already underway with TfL to address some of the issues around the loading and unloading within that happens within that area. The bus cages also present quite a significant challenge, not just to the development as it's actually constructed and will be in operation, but also in terms of its construction itself, so the period of construction. Alan Tilley, who isn't here tonight unfortunately, has already been engaging with TfL to ensure that that money is spent in addressing and improving the challenges that we face within the bus garage, and there are quite a few of them. So as much as the head of term is left slightly open, I've got no doubt that the money will be spent on the study, which needs to be undertaken, and then the work to deliver the outcomes of the study. Thank you. We will share our feedback with Dr. Tilley if it's not. Any other speakers from the committee? Councillor Davies.
I've got two, and they're very quick. I see that the Fire Brigade have reviewed this, and they've given a standard guidance notice. Can I just get a bit more information on that? And my second one is the environmental impact. With a development of that size, I'm surprised to see that there's no solar panels on the roof. Is there a way that we can add a solar power aspect to that? Because we are in an era where we need to be doing stuff like that.
Is that because of the terrace?
Yeah.
The roof terrace?
I don't know. There must be something that we can do to beef the environmental impact up on solar, etc.
But just in terms of the energy and sustainability, we have consulted our internal specialists on that, and there's been no objections raised there or concerns raised from that based on the submitted energy assessment. I've also secured conditions around that to ensure that appropriate measures are introduced or are adhered to during the development. So I didn't quite catch this specific question on the fire safety.
Yeah, just that I'd seen that they'd issued a standard guidance note 29. Let's get some information on what that is, what that entails. Is that something I know it says standard, but is that something that we would have to all developments or a development of this size?
So that document referred to from the London Fire Brigade is one that they would generally send to a case officer, just in automatic response, basically, to the consultation process.
Perfect. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Burrows.
Thanks, Chairman. I just want to say that what Councillor Davies said earlier, this is a huge development in the middle of a very, very busy high street already, and we've got to get this right from the outset. We have to be on top of it. Okay, it's the referral, stage 2 referral to GLO, that's fine. Will it get kicked back to us? If it does, and we need to make sure we're on top of it. But I just want to have confidence as well that demolishing something that size is going to take considerable effort and time. Are we happy with what's in place for the demolishing of this and the transportation out of the site? Because there's going to be some very large lorries in and out of there, across our infrastructure, across, various roads in and out of Uxbridge. We don't know if they're going to come in from the top end of the high street, the bottom end of the high street. Have we managed that well enough? And also, obviously, to protect those that are still shopping on the shops that are still open on the opposite side, from, dust, etc., because there's going to be loads of dust coming out of this. Are we happy with what's in place to manage that as well? Because I think transportation away from that site when this is demolished, that's just as important as getting the basics right for the planning and development.
Very good points, Councillor Burrows.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I think, I don't want to labour the point, but we too want to get this right as officers. We see this very much as a flagship site. It's one of the most important that we've got, and certainly in my time in planning, it's been the most important. I've been working on this site personally since 2018, so a great deal of negotiations gone into this application. And I think the applicant team have been very commendable in negotiating what has brought about a significantly amended scheme since the first one we saw. To answer the points regarding the construction, we've got condition 5 and 54. The details of the construction logistics and the delivery of the project will be assessed thoroughly by us and our transport colleagues to ensure that not only does the development get delivered, but also doesn't impact significantly on surrounding businesses and residents. I think it's really important. We all walk past it all the time, so it will be managed appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chamdale.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Burrows made a very good point there, because we've seen big developments happen and all the transport management schemes in place, and yet we've got great big lorries parked in front of people's drives at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Monday when the kids are going to go to school, and they shouldn't be there before 11. So if we can really manage that, with all said and done, I think looking at everything that we've said, I've been through the plans, I think it'd be a good development for Uxbridge. I think it will have a lot of benefits. So on that count, I think, I'll go with the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Davies.
I have to agree with both my colleagues here. And the officers for your report, I do think it's been very good and very thorough. I've just seen that even the asbestos and land contamination is there as well, which would have been one of my other concerns. So with that in mind, I look forward to seeing a new development, and I'm happy to second officers' recommendations.
Thank you very much. We are Councillor Sansapuri.
Yeah, I strongly believe that this is very encouraging scheme for our town centre. So I'm in support of that.
Thank you. So we are proposed and seconded. Can I have a show of hands in favour of approval of this application? That is unanimously. Agenda item 9 is approved. 7 years of hard work over within 40 minutes. Our final, I am conscious of time, and we are 2 hours 40 minutes in. The final agenda item, there is a reason, Katie, why you are, this is with you, 18 St Catherine's Road in Ruislip.
So this is actually going to be me speaking again, Councillor. I've just completely skipped past the presentation. Yeah. I'll do it verbally because I've just skipped completely past it on the screen. So it is only it's a minor material amendment to an existing application. So hopefully you won't need too much detail. I will just find the notes on it though. So item 10 relates to an application at 18 St Catherine's Road. The application has been brought before Planning Committee this evening as it's owned by the council. The application seeks to vary condition 2, the approved plans condition, and conditions 3 and 5, which are the tree protection and landscaping conditions, associated to planning consent reference 6039 APP 2021-3465. The 2021 application provided consent for the removal of the existing scout hut and the ancillary storage unit and the construction of a single-storey replacement scout hut building. The proposed changes involve the installation of an access ramp, dedicated disabled bay of parking on site, repositioning of the emergency access door to the same elevation, slight repositioning of the building on site which would have not have a noticeable impact upon the street scene or neighbour amenity. As the tree protection and landscaping conditions have been discharged and these proposed changes would now alter those details, the plan submitted to discharge those conditions, the details have been updated for consistency. In terms of the assessment of the application, the amendments are minor in nature, with the design remaining largely as originally approved. No amendments to the scale or the height of the building are proposed. The development would permit the construction of a new scout hut and increase accessibility to meet the required 2025 standards. All relevant specialists have been consulted, including the Highway Authority, Trees and Landscaping Officer, and the Waste Services team, and the Accessibility Officer, all of whom raised no objection. Officers considered the changes to be minor material and conform with the development plan. As such, for the reasons set out in more detail in the committee report, the application is recommended for approval.
Thank you, Chris. And just to flag that this wouldn't normally have come to committee apart from the fact that there is a liability on the council. This is not a petition item, however, we do have a written representation which I agreed to be read out from Councillor Smallwood of Ruislip Ward. Over to you, Liz.
Thank you, Chair. So Councillor Smallwood says, Chairman, members of the committee, I would be grateful if the Chairman could note my register of interest as a member of the Executive Committee of the 1st and 3rd Ruislip Scouts Group. I'm writing in strong support of this application, which will provide a fantastic new home for the 2nd/9th Ruislip Scout Group. The group's previous base has now been redeveloped into 3 family homes on Ladygate Lane, so this new facility is absolutely essential to ensure that the group can continue delivering high-quality scouting in our community. The proposed building is thoughtfully designed, modest in scale and sensitive to the surrounding area. Importantly, it includes key accessibility features such as a ramp, disabled parking bay and accessible toilet, helping to make scouting open to all. From a planning perspective, the proposed amendments are modest and entirely appropriate. The minor repositioning of the building, changes to fenestration and updated landscaping have no adverse impact on the surrounding residential character or neighbouring amenity. The accessibility improvements significantly enhance the inclusivity of the facility and align with both local and national planning policies, promoting equality and access for all. These changes ensure the building remains fit for purpose, policy compliant and a valuable community asset. Scouting provides young people with invaluable opportunities to develop confidence, skills and sets them up for life as rounded young people. The 2nd, 9th Ruislip have a long and proud history locally, and this new hut will ensure they have a permanent and suitable base from which to thrive in the years ahead. I urge the committee to approve the application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Liz. Councillor Singh, you were first.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is good improvement for the young kids, so I propose the officer's recommendation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Davies.
I'm happy to second officer's recommendations. How can we take scouts huts away from kids, eh?
Thank you very much. We are proposed and seconded. Can I have a show of hands in favour of officer's recommendation for approval? That is unanimous. Agenda item 10 is approved. Thank you all very much for a long meeting. We will close the meeting at 9:45.